Awesome. Well, super, super, super happy to have you back. Right now, it is my joy and pleasure to introduce this beautiful person that I just met today, Paola Jimenez. Paola lives out in San Diego, but works full time with Digital Nest as part of their business program. She's originally from Colombia, and I can't wait for you all to meet her and the amazing panelists that you have today. We were just in the back, and they're all really, really cool. So, without further ado, everybody, round of applause for Paola Jimenez.
Hello everybody. So, like Amber say, I'm Paula Jimenez Valencia. So my mom needs to be present too. So I'm from Medellin, Colombia. I'm the web and graphic design specialist at Business. And next to Alex Santana, we're the mentors and technical supervisor of 14-member consultant. Okay, and when I was trying to write these things, I think it sounds crazy when I say it out loud because my life has changed so much in the past 2 years. I quit to my job in digital marketing in Colombia. I got married. I moved to United States. I've been learning English and trying to think and speak English 24/7, which is hard to. And I also been confronting myself of rebuilding my career and asking questions every day of who I am, where do I fit, what can I offer. And there is something that I learned in my first job in Colombia, and I wanted to share really quick. And it's that you don't have to be 100% ready for anything. You just need to jump in and learn as you go on. So for those that have been waiting to be 100% ready to create a portfolio, to launch a website, to create a resume, you just need to do it. This journey, I can guarantee it haven't been easy, but a moment like this one right now, it make it completely worth it and beautiful. So thank you so much for being here. Okay, so with that, I wanna introduce our panelists. The first one is Consuelo Alba. She is the executive director and founder at Watsonville Film Festival. Under her leadership, the film festival has grown into a nonprofit art organization offering year-round film programming. Watsonville Film Festival showcases primarily Latino stories and uses film as a catalyst to inspire audiences and spark powerful conversation. Consuelo was born and raised in Mexico City, graduating with honors in communications, science, and journalism from UNAM. She was experienced in bilingual filmmaker. She has experience in bilingual filmmaker, journalist, and cultural activist and translator. And she was an editor and reporter with Nuevo Mundo, the Spanish language publication of San Jose Mercury News. Please welcome her. Just gonna sit there. That's better. So our next panelist is Dave Seaver. He is the CEO and creative director at Impact Creative. Dave has been driving content for over 20 years, from broadcast network to brands like Google, Hyundai, and Seagate. As an award-winning scriptwriter and editor, his career developed into directing commercials and documentaries. In his spare time, Dave devotes himself to post-disaster relief in places such as New Orleans, Haiti, and Philippines. Please welcome. Yep. And our last but not least is Edgar Ortega. Eddie is an independent game designer with love for system thinking and purposeful storytelling. From prototyping early AR/ER experiences at Intel RealSense Lab to providing creative direction as a senior producer at Funomena, Eddie leads a multidisciplinary team in diverse backgrounds in development of unique digital experiences, such as the award-winning VR storybook Luna. Eddie earned a BFA in digital storytelling from Ringling College of Arts, and he is also first-generation immigrant from Venezuela. He is passionate about using digital media to empower developers in underrepresented communities to tell their stories. Please welcome Eddie Ortega. So guys, I have some questions prepared, but we're gonna spend like 20 minutes with my prepared question, but the most important questions are the questions that you guys have. So please put on, take notes, and when the time comes, just raise your hand. We have some mic runners and they're gonna be ready to give you the mic and do the questions. Okay? So let's begin with the questions. So this is more like, it's just like a light question focusing in work environment, but if you can magically gain a superpower, what would it be?
For me, the superpower I would like to get is to be able to communicate with any person in the world.
So like telepathy, just like
No, no, no,
Oh,
like
okay.
know all the languages.
Oh,
So I could
love that.
chat with everyone, anywhere I go in the world, every corner.
I swear that was my superpower.
Really?
That was crazy.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're
So
connected.
since that was mine, I'll add to that. I thought it would be really cool to know everyone's first name. You just do, you know, like, hey Eddie, how's it going? You know?
Yeah.
That's crazy because I legitimately was thinking like if you could just speak to everyone, I think that would be like I mean you would start by being able to pull people together, right? As you probably already do. So
Yes.
yeah, two languages already feels kind of like a superpower. So you know.
Definitely, exactly.
Yeah, when you change your brain and you're like, I'm just confusing. Yeah, it's weird. So let's start going into design. So I have like the most basic question is like, I have a talent in communication or design. What do I do with it? What do I start? So start for
Yeah, so honestly, like this is a thing that I think every artist sort of struggles with, right? Like you're probably going to school because check. Sorry about that. Part of the superpower. You're probably going to school because you love the arts or some kind of communication, and a lot of what happens, at least what happened to me, was being really fixated on like, how am I going to make a living? And how am I going to make money? And I think a lot of people start there and they try to figure out like, how can I get a job out of my talents? And I would say before doing all that, the first thing that any creative person should do is get on the path to finding their voice and recognizing that like your voice is the most powerful tool that you have. And once you kind of like know what you care about, the issues that you care about, then applying your talents towards that becomes a lot more meaningful. And there's a lot more of a reason as to why should I cultivate X or Y talent or X aspect of my talent. I find that a lot of students don't feel ready to find their voice. They think like, oh, I'll find my voice someday in the future later. And it's like, actually, you have a voice now. You have a story that wants to be told, or you know people whose stories are not being told. Whatever it is, I would say for me, it's, you know, try to find your voice, get on the path to finding your voice, and then start making something as an exercise to start to discover that.
yeah, kind of like own your story and take your background and put it out there.
Exactly, yeah.
You wanna-
Well, it's a very good question. For me, I studied in Mexico City. I got my BA there. And I felt like I can do any job because I needed to pay my bills. I just was looking for opportunities. But I really found my mission here in the US. When I came to the US and I realized that there were so many of us, so many Latinos, so many Mexicans in this area, and very little representation in media, in politics, in anywhere. We have been invisible, and it doesn't matter how many of us are out there, we still are not represented. So that's when I realized, okay, that's what I need to do. I need to make our culture visible. So I started a store. I needed to make sure that we were connecting with mainstream. So I started doing lots of translations. I started doing different things, exploring, using my skills as a journalist and as an editor. And then I realized like what's most important to me, my passion, my voice, is to make sure that people know who we are, where we come from, and how amazing our culture is. Because we have seen that our culture is seen as a deficit, not as an asset. And so that was my role, to make sure that we celebrate and show the world what an amazing culture we have, especially being from Mexico.
Yes, absolutely. You want to add something?
Yeah, I can add. It might be the next question too. Is
Yeah.
how to get into video production and what you learn in school. So I do video production and done it for 20 years. And the answer to this question has changed so much since I did it in the 90s. It used to be actually very prohibitive to get into video production because the equipment's so expensive. Being able to get your hands on that kind of stuff and be able to work, in broadcasting, which was the main form of video, which of course is dying slowly now. But with video today, it's so much easier to get into it, where although there's technical aspects to learning how to edit and learning how to shoot, or being a lighting guy or being an audio guy, being able to just tell your story through video is super possible. And you can do it with your phones. Honestly, the new phones today are better than the best cameras 5 years ago, which is crazy. So really, it's no longer a game of you need to have all these crazy technical skills. That you just have to love doing it. And I think that's when I'm interviewing potential producers and editors, that's what I'm looking for, is people that just can't get enough of finding cool stories to tell and telling them, and the rest comes. So yes, it does help to go to a film school if you really love it, because they're going to teach you some theories, they're going to teach you some technical stuff. But beyond that, it's a cool industry because it's wide open.
Yeah, so my next question, you kind of start to get into, so what are those add-ons? So we go to college, we learn some things, but when we go outside, we say how do you apply these? Maybe what I studied doesn't apply to the industry. So we need to go outside and find those add-ons. And I think internet right now give you certification. You can go to Linda. You can do so many things in design for free. So what are those things that they should look right now outside of the college and they can do in their own time?
Yeah, there's kind of two parts I want to get into. One is learning how to communicate. You're going to hear it from us over and over and over. If you have the ability to communicate clearly and communicate through emails and be clear about what you're trying to say and what you do and what you're trying to accomplish, that's like 90% of being successful in honestly any industry. So
I have to agree on that.
Yeah.
So getting out there and going places, interning places, volunteering places, just getting more exposure to communicating with lots of different types of people and lots of different environments. I see it when I interview someone, the difference of someone who's gone to lots of places and interfaced a lot of people. It resonates. You're like, wow, this person has it. They have the ability to communicate in a way that's really cool, versus people that haven't done it a lot, and that's a limitation because it's hard for them to.
So what do you say? I wanted to compliment that. When we go out there and we try to find jobs and we try to present ourselves and sell ourselves, sometimes we get a lot of no's, and we get you're not for this job. Sometimes you think you're gonna get it, and something happened and you don't get that, and nothing happened. So how we can build like that, thick skin and accept no and build that to get the opportunity that we want.
I think it's what Eddie was saying. It's the voice. Keep building your own voice. No one can stop that. No one can stop you from making a website. No one can stop you from shooting videos. No one can stop you from documenting cool things that you're doing with your life. And that's not up to anybody except you to decide if that's awesome. So don't, the job maybe no, but.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And so it does connect with that initial idea, right? If you are working on developing your voice, and you see this, right? You see this on social media influencers or whatever, right? They just kind of start doing something and crafting their own narrative. And what they're really doing is they're sort of synthesizing their experiences into something that is curated to say, this is who I am, right? And if I take and I have a negative experience or whatever, I transform it, I own it, right, as part of my narrative, and then I use it as my voice. It's like, well, I got turned down for this thing, but there's this other thing going on. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I think once you have been in any kind of industry for a while, you start to see life from a different perspective, right? From your perspective right now, you might see all these people who have the power to turn me down, which is a very scary way to see the world. But when you're on the other side, you find that a lot of it is just business opportunities and timing, right? Anytime that we've tried to employ someone and it didn't work out, it was maybe not the right time, or it was just a business reasoning why it didn't work. So I think a thing that helps with that difficult feeling of I'm gonna get turned down a bunch and I'm gonna sort of get tumbled around a little bit, it's just seeing it as data. It's oh, you're just there, there's hundreds of people that may or may not need you, the timing might not be right, and if you have your own voice and narrative to fall back on, then you don't let your narrative become about this one person who turned you down or this one company who said that you didn't fit their bill or whatever. You are able to kind of transcend that particular experience and see it as just data in a long journey, I suppose.
Yeah, and it's the same thing when you make films. You have to make your films. It doesn't matter if they get accepted to film festivals to 1, 3, or 10. You just have to keep working on it and keep honing your skills and keep telling your stories, and you just keep moving forward no matter what. No matter what, eventually you'll find the opportunity that is waiting for you.
Yeah, and sorry, just to add one more thing, but like as Dave mentioned, like the technologies and the means of production are now becoming so commonplace that like the limiter is not can you get access to a camera. The limiter is kind of like can you capture someone's attention, you know, like can you hold somebody's time with meaning, right? Like at this point, time, which is so precious, is running away, and everybody wants to take your time or your attention for any amount of time. Don't waste it. Don't waste people's time. Don't waste your time, right? Like consume media that does something for you, that makes you feel better, that makes you learn something, that makes you grow, whatever. And then put out things that you feel are adding to the value of the world, right? Similarly, don't make things that you feel are wasting other people's time. At least that's my personal value. I have a bit of a strong standard about like what does it mean to make things, but that's personal. But anyway.
Yeah, I like that, and that connect with my next question is like when we're trying to embrace who we are, we need to navigate the U.S. market. So my next question is for Consuelo. How can we navigate the U.S. market without losing the essence of who we are?
Well, that's really the story of my life as an immigrant coming from Mexico. What I think is super important is to be true to yourself. To be true to yourself and to be proud of who you are. Because everywhere you go, you are bringing something very important to the table. You bring a fresh perspective. You bring a different way of seeing the world. You bring new words, new understanding. And that is super valuable. That's something that you need to treasure and cherish. And you need to make sure that you communicate it in a very powerful way so it's being heard, because that's what we're missing. Strong voices that can convey these strong messages that we need, and more media, more stories can be out there worth of the time. Because I agree, it's not just about producing, it's about capturing the attention.
And art is a beautiful medium to put all the things that we're feeling into something visual that people, no matter the language, they can read and they can feel what we're trying to say.
Yes, and again, I'm sorry, I just need to add that our superpowers again, and our essence is to be bicultural, to be bilingual. That is super important, that as students, don't lose that. Don't lose your Spanish, don't lose what you learn from your parents, from your family, because that is super, super important and valuable out there in the world as well, not just at home.
Well, I mean, I definitely agree with that perspective, and then in terms of like how that applies in the U.S. market, I think beyond. I mean, and I super agree with the voice part. I think that's like, yeah, right. It's like you have to believe your own story first, which is not easy when the entirety of the world is reminding you of maybe how your story doesn't want to be heard. Like this is an experience that I have very proactively. I'm from Venezuela, a country that is not doing well right now, and you know, I struggle with this myself. I feel like nobody wants to hear the stories of my culture, which I perceive to be disappearing. I mean, I grew up there. I'm not talking about like my parents brought me here. I'm talking about like I grew up there. I'm watching my culture fall apart and disappear. And some days I just have to tell myself like, you know what, man, like you have to speak about this, even if you feel like it doesn't matter to other people, because it matters to you, right? So I think that's definitely true. And I also think it's true, again, to also take a perspective of understanding that it's a part of a larger system. So like the US market is a very, very capitalistic force, which is a wonderful thing. It yields us these great technologies. It yields us these great avenues for communication. Understand that it's a system, and understand that you're playing in that system. And I used to be very idealistic and think I could just do everything sort of outside of the system. It doesn't work that way. It's like the same as politics, right? Like you want to get involved in these conversations. You want to participate in the system and kind of like play by its rules and kind of find ways in which you could kind of push its rules around to kind of like accept more perspectives, right? Because if you think about a system, you think about who designed that system, you kind of start to think about like who does the system service, right? This is kind of like what we, not to get too heavy, but this is what happens with like policing systems or like, you know, underappreciated communities all across, not just Latino communities, but of any kind of perspective, walk of life, right? Like rural communities in America, they all feel underrepresented in some way. So see those systems for what they are, participate in them, and try to find ways to mold them to fit broader perspectives. I think that's many generations worth of work laid out, but I think it has value. So I don't know if I answered the question. I went on a rant. I'm sorry about that. I feel like
Just keep talking. So let's when we just start to get into I have a job. I get this pressure of being creative. I need to respond to an industry that is asking me to create things. So I read this book that is called The Spark in the Grind. I recommend it. It talks about like creativity and productivity. So I like the part that when the book was telling that as a creative, sometimes we have some dreams, and the author was saying that he always dreamed to go to New York and work in cafes and be super like out there in public places and be like this movie kind of story idea that you go outside. And when he got there, he find that he was more creative in his own space and quiet space. So my question is, how do you find yourself more creative, and what are some things that you recommend for them so they can just grind that creativity and also with the productivity that comes?
Yeah, it's funny. We're actually just doing this at work. We work in an office. Even though it's video production, we still have offices, and so we still have to do a lot of script writing and planning. But you sit in the same place all the time. It's like at your schools, right? If this was a class every day, you guys would probably sit exactly where you are every single time, out of routine. It's like a weird thing that we do. And I've been starting to get our company to start breaking out of that, because it's amazing if you change your physical environment, it affects your brain in this crazy way where you now can think differently and be creative in completely different ways. So, and with that, that's why exploring the world a little bit is a really good idea. Getting out of Santa Cruz and going to travel somewhere to volunteer. That's why I've done a lot of those trips. You come back, not only are you inspired there and creative there, but you come back with a renewed sense of self, and then you get back into your routine. You sort of, and then you got to wake back up again. You got to change your environment and do new things.
I think that you can find inspiration everywhere. Museums, films that bring important issues visually, stories. And I get very inspired by community. I'm very inspired by potential, by the potential that we have to do better, to create new things. So that's why I'm so inspired to work here in Watsonville. I used to work in San Jose. I used to commute 50 miles each way. And at some point I was like, I wanna work in my community. I wanna connect with everybody, see everybody, walk around and talk about what we can do together. So that's really inspiring to me.
That's beautiful. Plus, I wonder if you could speak every language, how much more inspiration you'd get, right? Yeah, I think everybody gets inspired by a different thing too. So I think it's important to, I'm gonna keep talking about this voice thing, but if you know your voice, you kind of know what does it for you, and you can tune into that. For me, I get inspired by things that hurt. I get inspired by seeing people's suffering or pain or untold story, and saying, wow, I want somebody to hear this story, whatever. That gets me going.
Yeah. If I can add too, there's something I say all the time is, in my work, doing commercial work, there's a lot of interview stuff. So we'll interview engineers about the product that they created, or we'll interview the CEO about how they founded the company. And I always say there is so much talent in the world. It's like even when you see like a street performer and they're playing music, you're like, how in the world are you not famous? You know what I mean? And you're just one, or you're just someone in a cafe, and same thing with, I'm always inspired in my work, even though I do marketing for products. There's a lot of human inspiration that went into every single product you see. I know a lot of times marketing gets a bad rap. It's like, oh, we're forcing you on consumerism. That stuff aside, there are some genius people out there. Everyone's a genius in their own kind of rights, in their own categories. And in video production, you get to be inspired by them all the time because you got a backstage pass. I've been able to go to manufacturing plants for watching how a hard drive is made. I've gone in on going to the military with paratroopers up in planes to shoot how parajumpers do what they do. Right now we're doing a documentary on the Research Institute in Moss Landing, where these guys research 2 miles deep under the sea to try to map the seafloor. Like what? And to me, that's where inspiration comes from.
Yeah, I think it's about being curious. It's about wanting to see why things are, or how, whether it's emotional curiosity or technical curiosity, whatever, like being hungry for that curiosity.
And go for it and try to find the people that can teach you, can mentor you towards that knowledge that you want to achieve. Do you guys have any habits or things that make your days better, make you more creative, productive? But I say, for example, I look a lot on internet, like other people's works. So that's something I kind of do yeah, to create like
Yeah.
consciously.
I think curating habits in general is a good thing, right? I like it, and also a bad thing if you're like always sitting, and it is a habit of itself to curate, to be like break out of the pattern and go somewhere. Like that's a habit you can curate. For me, probably it's probably music. Honestly, I think the majority of what gets me really really like in a mindset is music, and similar to spaces. I find that when sonic spaces change, this is personal for me, my mind changes. So if depending on the kind of mindset I'm on, then I want to create certain things.
So you like when you get like your other senses get more stimulated. and then-
Yeah, or like switching the focus. Like if you've been looking at a piece of paper all day, like go out and climb or run, or also doing activities, go out surfing or something like that. Living life, I guess. You know.
Yeah. For me, it's walking in nature, and we have so many beautiful places around here: the beach, the woods. I mean, it's a really great way to refresh your mind and just go back to the work.
And I really like that because right now we're going towards like you just been in a computer all day, looking at that computer, then you go home and you probably sit in your cell phone or your computer and you forget what is happening out there. You forget to make those connections with people. So I really like what you're saying that you just need to, the inspiration is out there, it's not in your computer, it's the connection that you make with people, the connection that you have with the environment and the culture.
Yeah, well, and for me at work too, we have the office covered in chalkboards, not whiteboards. It's got to be chalk. But it, like riffing is like a really big thing. Like even with our team, a lot of times, just getting in a group and you can solve almost anything on a board. It's really crazy. Write it out, figure it out, map it out, and really.
And having conversations, I think, is another good one. I feel like when I feel myself really stagnating and I'm like, even a walk maybe is not doing it, I just go find somebody to talk to, right? A friend, somebody to get me out of my own frame of mind. And I would definitely encourage this, especially if you're a student, right? Like you're probably super focused on applying to the schools or getting your portfolio together, whatever it is. I would really encourage you to like talk to your peer, talk to the person that's next to you, talk to your family, whoever it is. Like, again, you find inspiration from that. You hear their stories. You kind of put yours in a new context, and you're like, wow, like there's so much more to life than what I'm looking at on my phone or whatever. Like.
Yeah, it actually helps when you say it out loud. You're listening to yourself, and sometimes you have the answers. Oh, yeah, and somebody's
Yeah, that's
just
the big
quiet
one.
there, and you're like, "Thank you." and
It's
then
a
you leave.
different way to process what's in there, and when you try to explain it, it starts making more sense.
That's a really
Yeah.
good
And
one.
then you
And
can
that's
go
what the
back.
board that you
Yeah,
say, you just
exactly.
put it out there, and it makes more sense. So we're talking about portfolio. Thank you for adding that. So, what are the things that usually wow you when you're looking into a portfolio?
I feel like you probably have a good
Yeah.
answer for this.
I've been wowed a lot by people. It's really hard to do, but putting yourself on camera, it's when I go look at a portfolio, if I click on a video and it's a video of you telling me why you love video or what gives you inspiration or some story you're telling, I'm always impressed by that. I have a hard time doing it. There's been times I have to do a video recording and it's really uncomfortable, so I'm always wowed by that. And then also the other part I was talking about where you've clearly done stories on your own time. Like you have a passion about something, you documented something, you produced something.
Yeah.
That to me is always really inspirational.
Yeah. I feel like.
For me, we go through this process of selecting films because our festival is very small and we have to be very selective. So it's always super important to be able to master the story. I mean, there are really powerful stories, but it's really hard to keep people's attention there 100%. So we have to be very critical. It's not just about the beautiful visuals, it's really about what's the essence of this story? Where are you taking me with this? And it's a very hard process. That's why we have a team making decisions, and that's why we have a rating system. And I mean, yeah, it's really about being able to tell a good story.
Yeah. And again, stories relate to voice. It's like, what's the voice behind the story? Why are you telling this story? But also with portfolios, like, it's also nice to see versatility, right? Like, it's, again, means of production are now more accessible. So if you're like super good at drawing or super good at photography, that's awesome to see. I love seeing a portfolio full of photography and then like, wham, a 3D model. What's that doing in there? Why? It shows that you're interested in other things in the world. So maybe to add to that, because definitely storytelling is the one. Like when I see something and I'm like, wow, you care about that, and you're photographing people with this particular perspective, whatever it is, whatever you're doing, but then also versatility, like, oh, you're doing it in different forms of medium, you're doing it with different materials, with different whatever formats or whatever. I find that to also be really impressive.
Yeah, let me add to this too. Actually, this is really critical. Is letting me know when I look at a portfolio, I like to know what you did on it, or what was the challenge, or what was the purpose. I need some context, because sometimes you see a video and it's like, no, the video was okay, but then when I learn what you were up against and why maybe you had some hurdles that were really hard to overcome, or who the client was, or what the purpose was, or what you did, because a lot of times maybe you were only the editor in it. That's important information.
That's very important information.
But a lot of people don't. They just put all their pretty videos, and they just assume I will know, or whoever's looking at the portfolio will know what their role was. So really spell out what, give a little behind the scenes of what was this video all about. It's really helpful.
So you think what you're saying is you recommend for them just always keep everything, every process, everything that you came up, how you got to that, keep it and try to express your thinking process.
Yeah, showing process.
Yeah.
That's honestly probably the top recommend right there. Showing your process is very important.
Yeah, I like that. You think when we're creating portfolio more towards design, design is something that we're born designer, or we can become a designer?
I have a strong take on this, but I very personally believe that we can, any of us can be anything. So I don't personally believe that people are born a designer or born a doctor or born a public speaker. I think that has to do with your narrative. If you choose to believe you are this, then you start to cultivate those skills, and then therefore you become it. So I really, really believe, I mean, you might be born with an inclination, of course, but I think anything, including the aspect of being able to put yourself on camera, right? Like, I would definitely say, like, I don't have the courage to put myself on camera, and you probably do it all the time, right? And so even that's like a thing that you could believe, oh, I'm just not made for that. You could just walk through the world and be like, I'm just not made for that. I'm never gonna do that. I'm never gonna be good at speaking to people face to face. It scares me. It's like, or you could own that, like, well, that's a struggle for me, but it's something I can work on. I think seeing all of those qualities that people see as talents as just skills to cultivate gives you a lot of opportunities in the world for like learning from the world. Seeing somebody who speaks confidently, asking yourself, what are they doing? Or talking to them, or and same with a designer. So if you see a designer and you're like, what are you doing there? If you believe about yourself that, well, I just don't get it, then you're already cutting yourself out of that running, And I think that's specifically dangerous for Latino communities, where you already are at risk of feeling like your voice doesn't count. So anyway, that's my personal perspective.
Yeah, I would just change it, not designer, but more like creative and creating content. Do you born with a natural skill, or you can develop that or that?
Well, I agree. I think that is an inclination. If you like something and you want to pursue it, you can get there. And I think that the important thing is, like, once you make a decision, I want to be a graphic designer, I want to be a filmmaker, it's like, what steps are you taking to get there? Yeah. I mean, that's the most important, because we can all be trained on everything or anything, right? But it's like, are we willing to put the time and money and resources into to develop ourselves?
So right now we're getting the time so you guys can ask questions. So if you have questions, please raise your hand and we're gonna hand the mic.
Yeah, I actually used it as a joint opportunity. I stopped going on vacation. I started making these my vacations. I would look for a place that I'm interested in going to, and then it started tying into. I actually started getting into post disaster relief, because when, like right now, the Bahamas, it's leveled. It's totally leveled. If you look up volunteering in the Bahamas right now, you can go right now and have the craziest life experience, I promise you, helping building homes, and it's hard work and all that stuff, but it's unbelievably incredible. But a year from now, people stop hearing about it. The volunteers kind of go away, and the Bahamas is still totally leveled. Like it's going to take years and years and years. So I started going to all these places, Haiti and Philippines and New Orleans all after, like a year after. So to answer your question though, I would definitely, where do you want to go in the world? And I guarantee you there's a volunteer organization that will welcome you there. They'll put you up, they'll feed you. You literally only have to buy your flight there. And you'll meet the most incredible people when you're there. You can go for a week. You can go. Some people go for 3 months. And it's endless. Literally everywhere in the world.
What do you Google? Like Philippines volunteer work? Like
That's exactly
that's
it.
awesome.
Yeah, just do that, and then you just start worming through, the different types of volunteer. When you first look it up, there's gonna be all big programs like the Volunteer Abroad and Kaya, and there's a whole bunch of them, and they're great too. That's a great place to start because they actually already have cultivated a lot of different programs, and you can start getting a sense for the types of programs in an area, and then just start finding a city and like honing in on that city, and also what do you like in. What I started doing was documenting for these nonprofits so that they could actually share what they're doing, so they can get fundraising and more volunteers and all that. So, if you're going there to do the volunteer work, then look. If you're into early childhood development, so look for programs that are doing that. If you're into nutrition programs, to do something like that. So, but being a video producer, they will welcome you so quickly to document their work, and you'll have a great story to tell, and you'll have a great video to show. And people like me, when they're looking at their portfolio, will be impressed by, wow, this guy went halfway around the world to document this program, doing this amazing thing, and they did it in this video that could probably play at a film festival. That's gonna get you a job.
Those are like powerful stories. Ready. No. God, I have so much to say about this. Do you want to go first, or do you wait? Oh God, I have so much to say about this. Like, I have peers who have 100,000 followers on the internet. I have 600. I am like basically no one. But I have a very fulfilling creative career in the work
Eddie.
that I do. Huh? Well, thank you, sir. And I would say it's a very dangerous trap at the moment. I mean, I'm not saying that there's no reason or worth to wanting to have that followership. I get it, right? Like, that is potential audience. When you think about having X number of follows, it translates to having mutability of power. Like, oh, it's power, right? It's like, wow, I'm gonna put a photo on the internet and 100,000 people are gonna see it. But here's my sort of counter take to that is, are they really seeing it? Think about how many pieces of art you've seen on Instagram in a week. And tell me if you can remember a single one of them, like without looking at your phone. This happens to me all the time. Like, I get what I call like negative inspiration from looking at the internet, because I see all these like amazing artists and I'm like, oh my God, when am I ever gonna be good enough to have this quality of art to then be able to have these follows? And what that's doing is taking ownership away from myself. It's saying that I need the follows before my story is worth telling. It's saying that I need the sort of value of the audience seeing me first before I actually believe the story I'm telling. If you actually translate that back to the physical world, it doesn't work. Like, oh, I need to sell out arenas before I'm acting. Like, how does that work? Like, or before I'm playing shows if I'm a musician? No, you start making, right? So it's a really dangerous sort of landscape to be in. I'm not saying that you should discount it and say, oh, I don't care about it, or that you should completely be obsessed with it. I think everybody finds their spectrum with it. But I think it's very dangerous to believe that, like, oh, you need to have this followership before you're somebody. I think that can lead down a really dangerous rabbit hole where people essentially stop making. I had like a period where I stopped making art for like 3 years. I mean, I've spent my entire life in like art school and whatever. I don't have 100,000 followers or whatever. And I was like, I guess I'm not an artist. It's like, really? Like, I'm not an artist because what? And I had to really examine that. And eventually I just took a break from social media and I found that making art is something that first and foremost should be something you do to fill you up here, not to get the follows and to get the things. And some of the best artists, you see them, and what they're actually doing is they're doing it for themselves. And there's a byproduct to it, which is that they put it on the internet and then the internet responds. But a lot of the art that maybe you want to make is not going to be compatible with the internet. I mean, point in case, like, I want to make art that's difficult to look at and not comfy and probably not going to fit in Instagram. And, So anyway, I have so much to say and I don't want to take up all the time, so I will Shut up.
Well, I have to say, as a filmmaker, it's important to promote your work, because what happens is that many of us, and I learned this the hard way, is that we think that when we make a film, we're done. Yes, our masterpiece is there. Who's going to see it? So that's when you start applying to film festivals, and it's important, it's a good practice to create a page in Facebook, in social media, to promote your own work so that more people can follow where you're going, how many people are seeing your film as it travels. And I have to say that many, like PBS, other organizations are looking at those numbers to say, well, people are interested in these stories. Otherwise, they get lost. I wouldn't spend too much time promoting, marketing, because there is no reason for that. But I think it's important to have a presence and to promote your own work, because it's a really good way to get larger audience.
Yeah, for me, I mean, yeah, no, I would never look at someone and say, wow, he doesn't have enough likes, so he's not worthy of hiring, obviously, you know. But that said, it's more, if you enjoy it, is that something fun? It's a channel. It's just like any other channel, you know, and it's a channel that you can totally dive into and have fun doing. And as long as you're doing fun, appropriate, good things on it, then yeah, have fun with it. But no, I don't think it's critical in the sense you were kind of saying.
And I just think the personal brand and everything that you guys are talking is just how you want to express what you want to do. And that's how you build your personal brand. I think it's really important for any of you guys to start thinking, what are the fonts, what are the colors, what are the things that express who you are. And I think that complements of how you want to manage your social media, how you want to manage your website, how you want to bring people to see your work.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually said the personal brand thing, because that is huge. That's the world we're living in now in video production. It's all contracting. So it is really important that when I see you and look at your site, that like you have a brand. It's true. I never thought of it that way, but it means a lot from my perspective. And then I understand, first of all, you understand brands, you understand how to market yourself, which helps me bring you in, but you just seem more professional, you know, it really helps.
I think it's a tool, right? Yeah. I think that the key is knowing that it's a tool, and maybe that's the equalizing factor here. Like for me, my relationship with social media is like a self-value thing first, which is not very good. For you, it's like, no, I need to put my film out there, I need to put my company out there, but you have a very healthy separation too. You're saying like, this isn't my story, this is just like, I'm promotion, and you're calling it promotion. You call it marketing and promotion, which is a lot of young people maybe think of it as like their personhood. So I appreciate that perspective a lot. It really helps.
Well, and don't stop. This is, I mean, I'm starting a marketing master's program in marketing technology just because I want to understand this stuff better. So I'm 41 years old. I'm running this company. You just don't stop. You know, like if it's interesting and you think you can gain something from it, like keep going.
Yeah, and also look like not only art, so marketing, like take part of each thing that we can grab and build how we project what we do to the world. Guys have more questions? Nice.
It's funny because I say find your voice, but I would say that I don't know what my voice is yet. And I think the advice would actually be very simple, is recognize that your voice is something that's always evolving, right? So you don't, I think when I say find your voice, I don't mean like you have to know your purpose and like your big mission, like it doesn't have to be that big, right? Like finding your voice can be as simple as like just tuning into like, where am I right now, honestly, with my life, right? Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be some grandiose, untold story that nobody else knows. It just has to be true to you. So when I say find your voice, my advice is like, you know, really, really tune into the experiences that you're having and see the value in them, instead of telling yourself some story about how these experiences don't matter. Like pointing case to the author that you were talking about, it's like he thought he would find his creativity if he moved to New York and did all this thing, and then he gets there and he's like, none of this is my voice at all, and I'm like super happy being in my studio or whatever it is. I think that's what I really mean by that. It's like just like kind of tune into the experiences that you're having and ask yourself like, well, how do I want to convert those experiences into art, you know, or how do I want to channel my creative skills with them? I don't know if that answers your question or. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, introspect on what's happening in your life and ask yourself if there are any issues that you want to turn into art. And if there aren't, that's fine too. Like you don't have to have that. Maybe you just want to make art because whatever. Like a lot of people make art because it's a very self-healing pursuit first. And I think that's still being a genuine and honest voice, like, and some people are like, my family's suffering and I need to express this somehow, and that's fine too. Those are both two real voices speaking their truth through art, and they both have value, you know what I mean? It's a very abstract thought, so I hope I'm not being super vague. Yeah.
Well, I can add a little something. I think it's also, you could also phrase it, instead of find your voices, follow your passion. Like, what do you just enjoy doing? Like, what just is fun for you? And it could be a million different things. And if you go down that road, it's amazing how all of a sudden you as a human will light up because you're doing things that you enjoy, and all of a sudden now you very clearly have a voice in that camp because it's lighting you up. If it's not lighting you up, then you're not going to speak much about it.
And I just would say, what moves you? What are you about? It's exploring where you resonate, what attracts you, how you respond to things, because that's a really good way to sense, to ground yourself in who you are and how you want to express that. Just be open to where you are, what surrounds you, what's meaningful to you, and explore that.
We have one question over there, and then I will go that, and then that.
My question is, looking at technology evolving right now, especially as you mentioned, broadcasters slowly dying. Is there any recommendations for students from your guys' experience that you'd like recommend in learning, like username or something in that aspect might not be now something that's being real?
Yeah, I get this one a lot too, because that's a great question, and there are so many niche things you can do in video production, like a colorist. Like right now, colorists are crushing it out there. There aren't people that really know how to do color really well, and they get paid a lot to do that. But I always want to buffer that by saying, don't get into doing color just because it's a good career choice. These guys love color, which is kind of unusual,
With the passion thing that you're talking about,
with a
right?
passion, right? So I think it is kind of knowing what your niche is and really diving into that, because whether it's on the audio side or motion designers or still designers or, oh my God, there's endless roles. So once you kind of find that, then learn the tech, because learn the software or learn the camera or whatever it is.
Yeah, I want to add to that if you're in any way related to a creative field that also involves technology, just off the gate, just be committed to learning as a lifelong thing. I mean, I believe this should be a thing always, no matter what you're doing. But for example, I wanted to get into video games, right? Video games have been around for quite a while, but right now, what that really means is doing VR and augmented reality is a completely different ballgame than what video games were when I envisioned that when I was a child or whatever, right? There's people who work in the energy industry, right? You hear about the coal miners who want their jobs because they haven't been able to transcend that discipline. Technology will keep evolving, so I would say don't chase one niche, chase the opportunity to keep learning whatever the new platforms are, and keep an eye out, look out, what do you see rising? Oh man, people are investing in these things, mobile technologies are happening or whatever, and just stay aware, and then when you see them rising, if they really interest you, try to get really into them and believe that you can learn it. I think that's a big thing, the gatekeeping. Don't fall into the gatekeeping of oh, well, I didn't study that or whatever, so I can't possibly learn it. You can, such a good question, and I would say the rebel in me just says, "Shake them up, go shake them up." Like, show them that you could do something different. But the whole voice thing, I'll speak from my personal experience, right? So like, I'm an independent developer from South America who wants to make games that aren't about killing or shooting or winning, and I'm like, where do you even go with that? Before I even found people, before I knew that there were people that wanted to do this, I first had to identify what I wanted to do. Okay, well, I want to make games about love or about sorrow or about experiences that don't exist. That whole voice part allows you to then identify other people who resonate with your voice. So what happens after you do that is you find people who care about communities that you care about. You find people that are interested in the same kinds of pursuits that you're doing. You find fellow colorists or fellow Mexican Latinos or Latin Americans that want to like promote their culture, whatever it is. Once you have your voice, you start to find your people. Once you find your people, you start to have power in the ability to create something together. That gives you credibility to then shake up bigger systems. Does that make sense? Maybe not linearly, but it gives you more power than as an individual. So you see these big systems that have taken hold for so long, you can't possibly move that mountain by yourself, but you can get motivated to get involved in these communities who also want to do these things, and together you start to kind of build your own new little mountain and displace those old ideas and keep fighting for that.
Yeah, I think I would add too that we're in super uncharted territory in this whole world of video production and the virtual reality and gaming. I mean, honestly, like it didn't change for decades. I mean, all the 50s until probably 2010, it was just TV, right? That was it, TV and commercials. Then YouTube started coming out. Where we are now, nobody knows. Nobody knows. Like everyone thinks the older people know, but the older people definitely don't know because this is all new to them too, and they're just trying to figure it out as we go. So there is so much opportunity to. If it's not been done before, that certainly doesn't mean it can't work or won't work. If anything, it's certainly worth trying. So I think it's an exciting time because it is so unknown how this is all going to play out, and it's going to change a lot too. So.
Have a question there in the back.
I mean, I studied communication sciences, and now that I'm running a nonprofit, I wish I had learned more about project management. I mean, you can apply that anywhere you go, and I had to learn it very recently, and it's amazing. It's the one thing I really highly recommend to anyone to really get into project management.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just mentioned when I did journalism broadcasting, that's what got me in this whole field, and I got into marketing right away. And I never knew it was marketing; it was just video production. But it was video production and marketing, which I've been doing this whole time. And now that I'm older, I'm realizing I don't really know anything about marketing. So that's why I'm going back to school, just to understand like what is this field that I'm even playing in. And now I'm like, I've only been doing it for 3 weeks, and my mind is like exploding. Like, oh my God, I've been doing this whole time, and I've been inside this ecosystem that I talk to marketing managers. Those are my clients. They are CMOs and marketing managers and product marketing managers and all these people. I'm now understanding the language they've been using this whole time. So, maybe kind of knowing what field you're looking to get into and learning the backside of it, is important.
That's awesome because you learned that, or you were sort of thrust yourself into that from a need, right? You started your business and you start doing this thing, and then you're like, oh, now I got to do marketing or I got to do project management or whatever. Mine is way more boring. Taxes. Taxes. I started a business like 5 years ago, and I did not know what I was doing, and I wish I had much better grounding on like how financial systems work, because money is power, whether I like that or not, and you will have to interface with it some way or another. So rather be educated than not. And strangely, schools don't teach it very well. So.
Well, let me add to that, actually. Like, it was about 7 years ago, but I wasn't running the company at the time, and financially we weren't doing very well, and so we had a bookkeeper who I don't think knew what she was doing. So I took Cabrillo classes for a year, bookkeeping, and took over our accounting. I became the operations manager.
Exactly.
Ran all the books. Now I'm doing P&Ls and all sorts of reporting and that I knew nothing about. And so it goes to show, I think, to answer that question, learn what you can, but no, you can always learn. I mean, you can always step back in the ring and pick up some skills.
Yeah, I love the answer of those questions because I was kind of like expecting to say, no, you should learn like 3D or something like that. And I like because we're talking that not only it's like creative or artists, we just need to grab like the whole ecosystem that we're trying to build. So I really appreciate this answer because project management and then taxes that I think is pretty great, and marketing and things that are not necessarily related with what we're doing right now, but that's why we build our perception and our process thinking to create better products. Okay, we can squeeze one more question here.
When you have one thing on it, honestly,
I was gonna say
honestly.
something similar.
When you got one thing on it, yeah, then it's ready to go, and then you just start adding from there. There's no number.
Well, the flip side of that would be if you have 100 pieces, take one out and ask yourself, can I take another one out? Take another one out. And then be like, when you can no longer take any out or add any more, that's a good time. And that also is related to your constraints, because you probably have a timeline. So it's also in relationship to the constraint of like, if the portfolio is due a month from now, can I add a piece to it now? It's probably a little too late for that. Well, then it's got to be ready, you know?
Actually, to that point, and this is critical, is don't put more things on it just because you think quantity matters more. Like, let's say you only have 3 things you've ever worked on, but one of them really sucks. Don't put it on there. People, I see it all the time, and I'm sorry to use that word, but like,
or even doesn't
sometimes
suck, but it's like kind of good. Like, ask yourself, can you do without it? Like I think most people advise you to put stuff in your portfolio. Not a lot of people tell you like, take something out.
Yeah, take it out. Yeah.
It's not that important. It's not, you think, oh, I gotta show everything. Nah, maybe this one's not that good.
Well, and you may not know. You don't know what I'm going to click on. So if I go to the portfolio, I may just click one thing, and I clicked, unfortunately, work that you've kind of progressed past in the last year or two, and I never even got to see your new work because I don't know, the thumbnail caught my attention.
Time is limited, right? Yeah. People looking at your portfolio likely won't see all of it. So highlight the stuff that matters.
Time is limited, and we're close to finish this panel. So I just want to add my last question, and I stole this question from one of my favorite podcasts, that is the School of Greatness. So let's say that 80 years from now is the end of your career, and all your work, everything that you have done in this time, it's gonna disappear, and you only have one piece of paper and a pen. So what piece of advice would you leave to this world?
I can start. I would say, have your own definition of success. Don't believe what everybody else tells you. Have your own definition of what success means to you, and go for that.
Yeah, it's definitely follow your gut. That's all I've ever done in my career. Just when there was a point when you're just like, I don't know, somebody's telling me it's time to move on from this job, or time to move out of this city, or time to go explore, do it. That's just, a lot of times we don't do it because it's harder, but I think that's what I'd say. And then on career advice, which is a little bit different, is be patient. That's another thing I see. You're in a position, you feel you're at the bottom of the totem pole, you feel like, God, am I going to do this the rest of my life? And you feel like you need to hop and do something else, but just be patient, and you'll be amazed at how over time the skills grow and you'll grow. So,
I guess I'll steal a quote from, I believe, the poet Rumi, maybe. But maybe not, I don't know. But I heard this advice before, and it has helped me in life, and it was, this too shall pass. So if you're at the top of the mountain, this will pass. Don't get fixated on it. And if you're at the bottom of the valley, this will pass. Don't get fixated on it. Just keep going. This too shall pass has been great for me, so I would pass that on.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, guys. Thank you so much
Thank you for having us.
spending time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
There's so many things to learn, and I hope you guys take a lot of inspire from these guys, and you can approach them after this and keep talking to them. So thank you for being here.
Can I do a quick plug for the video production people? Impactcreative.com is our website, and you'll see kind of the stuff we do, and you can contact me through that. I'm always happy to give tours, show you guys what we do, pick my brain. So,
Should we do all the plugs? We should do all the plugs. Phenomena, F-U-N-O-M-E-N-A, if you can spell that down. It is a game studio doing independent, very different stuff, and that's where I work, and if you want to know more about that, hit us up. F-U-N, fun, O, and then Mina, M-E-N-A. And if you forget Phenomena, like that.
Well, you are all invited to the Watsonville Film Festival. Our 8th annual festival will happen in March 2020, and we have wonderful films. If you have films, please send them our way. And yeah, thank you for being here.